Hi, everyone, and welcome to Intentional Guy. Today, I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine,
Mhm.
Karen Jolly. She is been so gracious to join me today. Karen, how are you doing today?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing great. A little raspy voice today, but happy to join you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. Well, the reason why I brought Karen, I want to talk about. So back in January, I had released my book, Exposed. Here,
Mhm.
this is the hard copy of it. Um, Exposed, and it just chronicles my journey um, back to restoration. The book is called Exposed: Secret Emails, Lies, Divorce, A Journey to Restoration. Uh, with it, and it was kind of a tough book to write, maybe but I'm asking Karen to come in here because Karen's a really good friend of ours. We
Mhm.
met at Momentum Church,
Mhm.
and we actually served for I don't even know how many
Yeah.
years we served together, quite a bit.
It's got
Um,
to be around 6 or 8, probably, I would
I
think.
I would think so.
Hmm.
Um, so here's a couple with our groups. This is we went to Orange together. I went with it was me and all the ladies, and it was always so much so much fun. We went on this trip. It was fun.
Yeah.
But here's a picture of me and Karen at Orange. The top
Hmm.
right, I think that was after one day we were tearing down, and remember it just poured rain on us, and we
Yes.
had no choice. This is what we looked like afterwards. And then the bottom one is Karen karaokeing with some of the kids from Big City and all that.
That's right.
So
Yes.
it was
Good days.
very good days. And
Yes.
what's important with those days, what days are, is when you met me, and I'm not going to take everything from you, because I like for you to kind of hear people hear it from your words. There's certain
Hmm.
people in each stage of my life that know me from in this book from different eras. Some who have read the book that knew me when I was growing up a preacher's kid
Hmm.
and saw me as that and as a teenager. Some knew me from the camp that I worked at. Some from college. And then some knew me when I was working as associate pastor and youth minister. And then um, there are people who were around when I fell into darkness. I don't know what you want to call it. And uh, and there's been people along that journey, and then there's people who've been at that journey during the restoration part.
Hmm.
And Karen got to see me through. We've known each other for 8 years,
Hmm.
at least. And so you saw me at a vulnerable time, and so
Hmm.
you got to see a lot of growth. So,
Hmm.
anyways, I don't want to talk too much. I wanted you to share a little bit about the book and what your and our thoughts on the restoration process.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like Mike said, I've known him for a long time since they first started coming to our church. And all I knew when Mike and Amber started coming to our church was that they had been hurt by the church, which I've heard of many times before, and that Mike used to be a youth pastor. I think I didn't know that, Mike, until maybe a couple years after I met you.
Yeah.
And I was said, we were serving in kids ministry together, and I knew that you just, man, had a gift. You had a gift. So when I learned that you had been a youth pastor, I was not surprised because I knew you had just a way with presenting the Bible to kids, and it was so good. And I was in awe the first time that you spoke in Momentum Kids. So that was
And
really
I think what some people need to know in that timeline, that would maybe a year and a half after, maybe 2 years after working with you. I mean, it was a
yeah.
while
So
because at
yeah,
first I came in, I was scared.
yeah. And I do remember that we had to kind of talk you guys, kids leaders, kind of had to talk you guys into just stepping in just just to run the sound, just to run the video, just come in and just
Yes.
make sure everything sounds good. That's all we need you to do.
Yes.
Little did he know that we had a bigger plan behind the
Yes.
scenes. But I do remember being told that not to overwhelm you guys, not to come in and ask you to do all the things at first. So those are the things I knew. I did. I think you told us not so long into meeting you that you were told you would never be used again. And that is all I knew until I read your book. I didn't ask. I didn't really feel like at that point it was any of my business. I just knew that you guys were where you needed to be and you were being
Yeah.
used, and that's all I needed to know from that point on.
Yeah.
So when I read your book, I think I read it in like 2 days because I couldn't put it down. I was like, I know Mike for who he is now. I never knew that past, and we could probably talk for a very long time about the way we grew up. I know that you and I have
Yeah.
talked extensively about legalism and shame, and that we really grew up the same way. And luckily, I saw that happening around me. I saw people in where I grew up, I saw people get shamed and not get the help and the encouragement that they needed. Thankfully, I was removed from that. Like after I married my husband, we went to a different church and found out that relationships with Jesus is more important than what people think about you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you found too, eventually, was the people who are doing the shaming are likely hiding something as well.
Yeah.
Um, and and the one thing, like, coming out of that, and the one thing that keeps ringing through to me for your restoration phase is community, and that's what you needed. And I think that
Yes.
is what helped pull you guys out of the darkness as far as isolation and not getting around other Christians for fear of shame. I think community is what just can come alongside and help people. So when you got that is when I saw that you guys really changed.
Yes, and I mean, and you got it so right. I don't I do not believe you cannot find restoration without the right relationships in your
Mhm.
life,
Mhm.
and those healthy relationships because when we came in, j to clarify, w there was a lot of guilt and shame.
Mhm.
Me and Amber felt like we had been hurt by the church stuff. Come to
Mhm.
find out, nah, we really, uh, hurt the church. We really hurt ourselves. As you read the book, you see things we're not so proud of that took place, but the enemy used that to paralyze us.
Yes.
And um, it's funny because I was serving in one part of the church where I got started, and some things happened there, and I just how the enemy wants to take you out, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Especially if you're improving and all that.
Yes.
And I remember walking into the kids ministry into there, and it was utter chaos. Because we would have at that time, I think what it was nothing to have 40 kids or
Oh
something
yeah.
like that,
Oh,
you
at
know,
least. Mhm.
and but it was organized chaos, and
Yeah.
I just thought, like, I'm just going I will do the sound, the lights, the
Mhm.
setup, tear down, uh,
Yeah.
but, I because even though I had been a youth pastor, I worked with teenagers. Little
Mhm.
kids, I was never good with, I'm like, nah, they scared me, right? And I remember, you work with a bunch of women, they're very tricky, first off. Uh, so
we like
but
we like to call it strategic.
oh, is that what it is? Very
Yes.
strategic, yes. Um, but what I loved about it was when you guys, See, there was something that happened to me. I felt like a throwaway person,
Mhm.
like, um, I don't know. I felt abandoned and
Mhm.
lonely, and I didn't feel, until I wrote this, I didn't, I didn't really felt I deserved to be healed too,
Mm.
or to be
Mhm.
forgiven.
Mhm.
But up to this point, I had always felt like a thrown away person. And I even think I mentioned a couple of times things to you guys like to make you wouldn't really like me if you knew me, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And none of that ever mattered. And that's what
Right.
I really enjoyed. And once you get in there around the kids, kind of forget everything because
Mhm.
it becomes all about the kids,
Yeah.
right? And then they're actually, I think, who helped bring down a lot of our walls
Mhm.
was once we started ministry. And I remember the first time that I ministered, uh, that I did something other than um, the lights, and it was we were going to have music day,
Mhm.
and it was
Mhm.
everybody. We were going to have people play their instruments, and I think your daughter Callie played the violin. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
and someone had told, well, Amber did. Amber betrayed me. It told you and
Mhm.
Hannah and Amy
Mhm.
that I played the guitar. And it was
Yes.
like, "Oh, no, no, please,
Mhm.
please, please." I was like, and I had an easy out. "Oh, I'd love to, but I don't have a guitar," and
Mhm.
all that. And then, you guys had a guitar for me, you
Right.
know? And I remember, I was scared to death, and I remember walking up there, getting on stage and singing. I sung a song that I have sung the majority of my life because I know it was called "Somebody's Praying for You." Ricky Skaggs does that song, and that was just something that always I could sing when I was hurting or down or whatever. But
Mhm.
that day, after I got done doing that, God did something.
Mhm.
I don't know what it was. God, how to explain it? It's supernatural, right?
Mhm.
But God did something in that moment, and then next thing I know, Karen has got me doing games
Yep.
and helping with games. And
Mhm.
the bad thing is, and anybody that knows me knows this, if you give me a microphone, it's over. It
Yep.
is over. And I think I went a little berserk with the microphone and emceeing the games, but we just started having fun
Yeah.
serving together, you
Mhm.
know. And but it was in those times. But when you read the book, uh, were you shocked with some of the stuff that you read?
Yeah, I was. I mean that's just the perfect word to describe it because that's not who I know. And so it was like reading about a different person because
And I
I had no idea.
and I and I love that because God has spoken into my restoration in this year during my restoration. Um, since the book has gone out and I put it out, first it's God's story, it's not my story.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, I've been able to look at that book and say, but that's not me,
Right.
and I'm no longer defined by the worst moments in my life.
Mhm.
I'm defined by who God has created me to be,
Right.
and it was I have to give a lot of credit to Big City, um, because you guys, I repeatedly said, God would never be able to use me again, and I believed it.
Mhm.
I believed it,
Mhm.
and you guys saw something different that we couldn't see at the time,
Mhm.
you know,
And I
and
feel like God allowed us to see that. That was him leading and him just showing us who you really are.
yeah, and one of my favorite memories I won't forget is beach baptism.
Mhm.
Me and you side by side baptizing all these little kids that we had
Yep.
led to the Lord. more kids.
Mhm.
I baptized more people that day than I had ever in my ministry at a church. I have led more kids to the Lord, and I remember when me and you were baptizing and doing. Amy was across from me, and I remember Amy looked over at me and said, "You still believe that God can't use you, Mike?" You
Mhm.
know,
I
and
remember that.
that was another um, eye moment for me. But
Yeah.
and that's why I think I'm trying to push my book, out there is to help bring hope to people who don't maybe have that hope because
Right.
I didn't have it. I could see hope for you. I could see hope for
Mhm.
everybody else, but I could not see the hope for me. Um,
Mhm.
and maybe because of the shame, there's a part in the book that I quoted from someone that says, "There is nothing we can do to make God love us more, and there is nothing we can do to make God love us less."
That's right.
And the only way I could learn that was through my relationships at Momentum, at the church that
Mhm.
we're going to, the friendships that I made there, with you guys, my wife, and my wife, uh, she has bigger walls than me. Her walls went even higher, okay?
Mhm.
And, eh, I know that Karen, you were very instrumental in that because you would take that extra moment to spend time with us before the gatherings, after the gatherings, um, and to speak truth when we would hear the enemy that lies in our
Mhm.
ears, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and all that. And that's where the appreciation really comes from for me, you know. Galatians 6, I want to share that real quick. It says, "Brother and sister, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourself so you also may be tempted." But I love that it says, "But you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently." And
Mhm.
that's what you guys did, you know,
Mhm.
for us. You guys, you loved us without knowing us, you
Mhm.
know, and we became family
Mhm.
after that time period, you know. And right now, um, we all have branched out into something else.
Mhm.
Um, I'm focusing on this ministry, but I am going to go back to kids ministry, kids
Mhm.
big city, at least once a month.
I love that.
Uh, and just because it brings me, it gives me joy, you
Mhm.
know, working with those kids. And after the car wreck, I had dropped out, and then
Mhm.
as you read the book, you'll read about what happened to John, our son.
Mhm.
And John just gave his story on here,
Mhm.
and talked about, um, our son had been molested. And Karen has moved into the youth group side at our
Mhm.
church, and it's, you love us, you know how you love us when you love on our kids, right? If you love my
Mhm.
kids, you've got my heart,
Yeah. Mhm.
and God, I ha I don't wanna sound so selfish, but I feel like God put you in the youth group ministry for us, for John, because John learned to trust you
Mhm.
in big city,
Mhm.
and he built that relationship with you in big city. And after John went through all the stuff that he did, Karen was instrumental in pushing John into becoming more involved in the youth group
Mhm.
and made us not worry too when John went on retreats and other things that, Mama Karen was
Yeah.
watching our son too, and that he was okay.
Mhm.
Which is important. And one of the things that we have in our life is that we talk about doing life together.
Mhm.
And I really feel Karen is one of those people. We're definitely doing life together.
Yeah.
You know
Through the good, bad, and the ugly.
exactly.
Yep.
And for me, I want to ask you another question about the book.
Mhm.
So it has a lot of ugly in it. It
Mhm.
has a lot of ugly in it. It really does. Um, were you a and you were able I didn't I didn't even know you read the book until I saw what you posted, that you posted a
Mhm.
review for me on there, and, I was scared to death, you know? I was scared to death
Sure.
because how is she gonna see me? Um, but I like what you've already said, you see me for who God has restored me to be,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
But yeah. And even through that, we are called to love. And so seeing who you were and then seeing who you are now, it just gave me a whole new respect instead of, a judgment. It gave me a whole new respect for you and for what you've overcome and what God has helped you guys through. And it's a beautiful picture of how Christ works.
yeah,
Look at his disciples who he handpicked, who
right,
weren't living right. They weren't doing the right thing until Jesus came along and said, "Come follow me," and they did. But did were they perfect when they were following Jesus? No. I mean, look at Peter and Thomas who doubted and Judas who betrayed him. Like they all were Jesus followers, but they all continued to mess up. But he just brings them back and says,
yes,
"I forgive you," over and over and over. And that's something that we all deserve because he died for us, not
yes,
because we earn it, but because of him. So,
yes,
you know, yes, there are times where it's hard to look at somebody's past and still love, but for you guys, because of how far you've come, it was not hard. It was I was thankful to know your whole story finally, just because I know what you guys are doing for him now, for God now, and where you are.
yeah, and, that's the reason why I wanted to write that book, and we come from a same type of circle of
Mhm.
churches, right,
Mhm.
is, the reason why I didn't have any hope was because I never saw a full restoration before in my life.
Right.
I had seen and I put a passage in there. There was a pastor friend of ours who fell into sin, and I remember other preachers who were kinda rejoicing that that he was found out. Bless God, another bad preacher gone is what I heard,
Mm. Mm.
And I we have a tendency to kick each other when we're down, and
Mhm.
sometimes the people who hurt us the most will be other Christians,
Mhm.
you know? And but why I wrote this book was because I never saw it illustrated to me. So I didn't think it was possible to come back to God.
Right.
Not not fully, you know? And I'm gonna tell you that today I have a better relationship with God than I have ever had in my life.
Mm.
Today, I am and I'm not saying this boastfully, I'm saying this being excited that I'm happy today. I have a
Mhm.
life of joy and peace
Mhm.
that I really didn't know existed. And a lot of people are like, "Well, he couldn't have been saved and done the things that he did." I was judged a lot by people saying I couldn't be saved here and that. But
I
but
heard that a lot growing up.
Christians we're capable of murder, anything, all
Yeah.
that stuff. We're capable of the worst sins that
Mhm.
somebody else is if we take our eyes off of God. And
Right.
that's what happened to me was my eyes got off God. And so I wanted to write this book, Karen, to those who find themselves hurting,
Mhm.
thrown away, lonely,
Mhm.
that there is hope. And one of the things that I wanted to illustrate in my book was, and I didn't even get it, I fully until I read my book. That's the crazy thing is I
Mhm.
first off, who am I to write a book? Up until 2 years ago, I didn't even I could have named on I probably read 5 books in my life, you know? Now I've read tons of books, but as I was writing this book, I was seeing that each step of the way in my journey, even at my darkest hours where I pushed God away, God didn't leave, and God had someone in the sidelines each
Mhm.
step of the way for when I was ready to choose
Mm,
to follow him,
that's so good.
he had somebody there.
Right.
And there was lots of times because I would listen. And this is funny. I put this in my devotional that I wrote. It's funny. Sometimes we will give the enemy our ear more than we will give God.
Mhm.
And we will
Mhm.
listen to the enemy lie to us more
Mhm.
than adhere to the truth that God has in front of us.
Right.
And, I'm hoping that my book, the reason why I want to encourage people to read it is so that they can find that hope
Mhm.
that is in Christ and that they can see in me
Hmm.
that you can be restored
Yeah.
and that God is not done with you,
Right.
you know? And so, but also I want to reach out to, because you said something in your post, and I meant to pull it up. But you said something in it that, in fact, no, I don't have time to pull it up because it takes me forever to pull things up on my iPad. But you said something in it to this effect that by reading this, it helped you to not take for granted that everybody around is where you think they might be, or
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I can't say it the right way. But there was something that you said that opened your eyes, that helped you to
Yeah.
be a little bit better because people like you didn't know how much we needed you,
I didn't.
but you were there. And
Right.
you're a testament of what God wants out of people and what I'm hoping people will see that, the Mike Collins, the Karen
Mhm.
Jollies, the Tim Paynes, the Amy Geis,
Mhm.
all these people who were instrumental in my life, um, didn't know my story
Right.
because it wasn't required.
Mhm.
You guys love me regardless. You accepted us regardless. Um, and I think you would have done that even still, and maybe even more so if you did know our story.
Mhm.
You know, I would just want to encourage people out there that you're in a good place, and maybe
Mhm.
you can speak to this, Karen, a little bit too. Um, Read this book,
Mhm.
look for signs in other people, and know that we don't know what other people are going through. But
Yeah.
are you someone that you can look past it and help? Because I can't tell you how many times Tim Payne tried to get us to
Mhm.
church and tried to work with us, and
Mhm.
but he never gave up on us.
Mhm.
Amy never gave up on us. You never gave up on us in there. And I know there had to be times that you guys were so sick of the same song and dance routine. Like, when are they going to get it? But eventually we get it.
Yeah.
And we got it through your guys' relationships. So I
Mhm.
hope that that is illustrated in the pages of my book, that
Yeah.
it's the relationships that count the most.
I think that's a great way to look at it. If you're somebody who is needing hope, read the book. If you're somebody who has hope, read the book because you can see it from the other side and you can see what people go through and it will definitely help you love better. It helped me love better.
Yeah. So, how did you like the hook at the beginning? That did that I don't know that I ever told you about the FBI.
No, I mean, that was it, just pure shocking. I had no idea. I
Yeah.
didn't know about that. I didn't know about your daughter. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I don't want to give too much away. I want people to read it, but
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, yeah.
It was su
So,
it was such an up and down journey, and the reason why the book is called Exposed, and I think, Karen, you can understand this. Um, my biggest fear is that the world would find me out.
mhm.
My biggest fear is, would Karen Jolly still love me if she knew me, you
Yeah.
know? And writing this book was God telling me to write this book,
Mhm.
you know, and to expose myself.
Yeah.
And I think he needed me to do that, one, because once I read that book, once I heard from you guys, and I remember I saw where you put it on the post, but the first time I saw you back at church
Mhm.
after you read the book, you beelined right to me and gave me a hug and told me how proud of you were that I
Mhm.
had wrote that,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, I can't tell you because my fear is, how's Karen going to accept me? You know, how are people going to accept me? And then I
Yeah.
realized it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
I have lost some people over this. There are some
Sure.
friends I have not heard back because they cannot, and I think it's because they can't wrap their head around it. Maybe they feel
Mm.
betrayed.
Yeah.
I wasn't the person everyone thought I was. I wasn't the person I thought I was
Sure.
because I was brought up really playing a role
Mhm.
instead of living it,
Yeah.
you know?
So that's a great point, Mike. And I think all of us, no matter our past sins or struggles, I know that, and maybe it is the way we grew up, but I know I've heard from a lot of people that there is something about someone knowing something about you. I think sometimes I feel like, you know, someone's going to expose me for not being as loving as I portray myself to be, because we have moments of
Right,
hardship, or we have moments of struggle with ourself, and listening to the enemy, like you said. But I think I definitely grew up feeling like I'm a fraud and I'm a fake, and you know like nobody hears me yell at my kids. And so when
right,
I post something nice about my kids on Facebook or Instagram, it makes the enemy can take that and say, "Oh, what if they knew that you just, called your daughter a little brat, or told her to stop being a brat, or didn't
right,
respond to her nicely?" That is sometimes how I feel, that I just don't necessarily want everybody to know that. So
right.
I think that's a spiritual battle that we all have to face.
Mhm.
And then when you come clean and you are like, you know what, I'm not the perfect mom. You know what, I'm not the perfect wife. And this is me and my flaws and all. It's freeing,
It
and
is.
I think I've told my kids, when there is something that you're hiding, let's say, for instance, you're not doing your schoolwork and you go to school every day unprepared, of course you're going to have anxiety. Of course you're
Right.
going to worry that you're going to fail the test because you're not putting in the work. So that's another way of that feeling. But being free to be truthful, I feel like, is just a sense of freedom that people can have. So if you're struggling, have somebody to talk to and just pour your heart and soul out to. And that's a sense of being exposed, but yet finding freedom. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you found.
Yeah. And I think you guys illustrate it well. And I love what you said earlier. It was through our community.
Hmm.
You guys helped us. You brought us into your family.
Yeah.
You brought, and without knowing, and we affect people sometimes without knowing their story, that they needed they needed our relationship. We don't know why God puts us in some of those places. And that's one reason why I love our church so much, is
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
you know, no perfect people allowed, right?
Right.
Um, but we live by that, and we're not perfect, you know,
No.
um, by any means. Neither are our leaders perfect
No.
by any means, but we every day we're trying to live intentionally for God,
Yeah. Right.
and that's where this ministry came from, was uh learning the word intentional while working
Mm.
with you. God gave that word to me, and
Hmm.
now that has changed me. And something that is so exciting is, for you guys that are watching this video and everything, is there is peace, there is joy, there is happiness,
Yeah.
there is all the stuff waiting for you.
Hmm.
Don't let the enemy have your ear. Don't let him think
Right.
that, you know, you're not worth
Yeah.
loving. You
Yeah.
know, you were worth loving so much that God died for us. And
That's right.
I felt like I was. I was the exception to the rule, you know? And the truth is, I've said this over and over again,
Mm,
in my podcast, but one person, Ted Cunningham, asked me one question, and that question I ask that question of myself every day. How does God see you? How do
mm,
you think God sees you? And every day I kind of look at that because it helps me put myself back into perspective. It doesn't matter what the
mhm.
world sees in me. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter what my Facebook looks like. It
yeah,
doesn't matter what the enemy is saying in my ear.
yeah.
How does God see me today? And it took me a long journey to realize
Mhm.
God's love for me because I was one of those kids that grew up, I hate myself.
Mm,
And I said that every day of my life. I hate you,
mm.
until this past year, you
Right.
know, but now I'm living in freedom
Yeah.
and it's so amazing, and that's what I love about our church. I see so many of those stories around me,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
and so I just want to encourage people, listen, there are people out there. If you find that community, get
Yeah.
involved. A lot of people we go, I think one of the things that I like about our church is we it's all about volunteering. It's all
Mhm.
about serving, you know, and by serving, you can get outside of yourself. Helping
Mhm.
someone else
Yes.
gets you outside of who you are.
Yes.
And the majority of churches I came from before coming to Momentum, it was always the staff people serving
Mm.
and doing it all. And what I love about here is everybody. We should be serving at our church. If we're just going in, sitting in the pew,
Mhm.
we're not doing our part.
Yeah.
We need to be doing more. And, you know, it's important to add to that
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. And that's a great way to find a community is finding some way to give back and volunteering and it all when I'm in a bad place or in my head and all up in my feels, going and helping somebody certainly takes me out of it right away.
Yep. Yep. And, we knew Karen because Karen, you guys were at the beginning of the church, I think. You guys were there everywhere. So Karen and Doug, you saw Karen and Doug everywhere. So we knew you guys, but we didn't know you.
Yeah.
And I am so appreciative of our friendship and
Mhm.
the relationship that we have. Um, it's it's awesome. It's
Yep.
awesome to have
I'm
friends
thanks
like
I'm very
this.
thankful too. Yep.
And I just want to thank you for coming on here today and sharing that um, with us and talking about my book a little bit. Hopefully people will know I'm not trying to sell a book to make money.
Right. No.
You know, um, if you can't afford it, message me and I'll get you a copy.
Mhm.
Um, but I want people to read my story because I think it's one of healing, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping that God will show you that you can be restored,
Mhm.
and I was restored. I'm I can say I'm fully restored. You know how great that
Yeah.
is? You know
Yeah.
how happy it is?
Yes,
And
that's awesome.
to smile
Mhm.
and all this. And my wife, she asked me the other day, "Are you okay?" It's funny because you know me. Everybody that knows me knows I like my mouth goes 90 miles an hour. I've always got some kind of sarcastic pun coming out. I'm trying to make everybody laugh, do whatever I can, right? And I'm not so
Mhm.
much that person anymore. I I sit back and I'm still funny. I still tell jokes and I still enjoy that. In fact, I didn't even know until we started serving it. Karen knew my sister,
Mhm.
Becky. And anyways, but I am different today because now I don't have to try and make you like me.
Right.
You know, my joy and peace doesn't come from who accepts me and who doesn't.
That's
So
right.
I don't have
That's
to be
right.
out there trying to do that. And
Mhm.
now what I'm doing is I'm sitting back and I'm watching and I've been asking God to make me a Michael Collins, to
Mm.
make me a Karen Jolly, to make me an Amy Geis, to be one of those to be what you guys were to me in those times. I don't want what I went through to be in vain. And
Right.
so from the deepest part of my heart, thank you, friend, for being
Oh.
my friend, because it means the world to me. And I hope that people, after listening to me and you talk today, will go on Amazon. I'll put it in the link
Mhm.
where it's at,
Yep.
and purchase this book. Get this book, read it. It's even an Audible. It's on digital format, and it's amazing. I have been able to publish this book and do all this, Karen, for under $500,
Wow.
which
That's
is unheard of
that's
because
awesome.
it's normally about $5,000 to get your book published
Wow.
and all this stuff done, but that is how God has opened the door once,
Mhm.
he told me to write this book, and, um, it took me I wrote it in 2 months,
Wow.
which is unheard of. I wrote it in 2 months, but, uh, God it just poured out. It
Yeah.
just poured out, and there was times where I just thought as I was writing this book, I was weeping
Mhm.
and crying, and I would have to stop because I would
Mm.
get so overwhelmed. I would have to tell the spirit of, um, lie that was lying to me
Mhm.
to get away, that
Mhm.
as I was writing this, people are gonna reject you. I can't
Mm.
believe nobody wants to hear, you know, what a sick person you were, and
Right.
just all these lies that came in.
Yeah.
And I know I've learned one thing is I'm not alone in those feelings,
Mhm.
and that there's
Mhm.
several people out there that have those. So I hope today
Yeah.
people are encouraged, and I hope that, you know, people can see the joy in our lives
Mhm.
and how important it is to show the joy in our life and to have that freedom.
Yep.
So, any last things you want to say before we sign off?
No, just definitely buy the book. You won't put it down. It's great. It's just a great story of hope. And I'm thankful that you're my friend, and I'm thankful that you did that, because I, even since the book came out, just the joy between you and Amber and all the wonderful things going on with your family, it's so great to see.
Yeah, we're sitting back enjoying the blessings
Mhm.
of God and what it means to have favor, to have
Yeah.
God's favor, and it's shining through in my family right now. And
Yeah.
and I told my wife the other day, I said, we need to enjoy this because the enemy doesn't like this.
Mhm.
He's
Right.
he's going to try and stop this, but our peace doesn't come from anything but God now. So
That's
he's
right.
going to have a harder time this time.
That's right. Your eyes are on the right prize.
That's
That's
right.
good. Yep.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for being here. And everyone, until next time, just keep being intentional. Thank you.
Mhm.